All right. So this is the discussion that introduces philosophy into our great conversation. And we have these immensely influential thinkers, Heraclitus and Parmenides. Heraclitus comes from the same area that Thales and his Milesian successors come from, that is the western coast of modern-day Turkey. I wanted to read a little bit. One of those successors, or the one that in the tradition is thought to be a student of Thales, Anaximander, who it seems wrote, well, the fragment that we've got of his is in fact the oldest piece of European prose that survives. And so we've raised that issue of prose and poetry and trying to be sensitive to the medium in which a thinker is expressing his or her thoughts. Philosophy begins a shift towards prose, though we've also seen prose in the Genesis. So that again, that was kind of anomalous and a thing worthy of thought. But we'll see this very much when we get to Herodotus, that there is a work of Homeric scale with a Homeric subject, but now it's not being done in dactylic hexameters, it's being done in prose. Well, the philosophers begin this shift, and Anaximander talks about his first principle, his arche, is something called the apeiron, that is the unbounded, the limitless. And from that apeiron come into being all the heavens and the worlds in them. And the source of coming to be for existing things is that into which destruction too happens, according to necessity, for they pay penalty and retribution to each other for their injustice according to the assessment of time. So it's an obscure kind of statement, but it's a statement of a great feeling for the coming to be, the genesis and the destruction, the passing away of temporal things, and bringing in this notion of justice somehow as being involved. Heraclitus is clearly very sensitive to the same drama of genesis and corruption. I think we'll find, of course, that a simplistic assignment of Heraclitus as the champion of becoming against Parmenides as the champion of being probably doesn't hold up, because of Heraclitus's insistence on the logos, the word, the ratio, things that is coordinate to this becoming. So what Heraclitus has is a very, very subtle account of reality. He's part of the Ionian Enlightenment, this explosion of philosophy that has to do, I believe, with the convergence of civilizations in the cosmopolitan and commercial bustle of Ionia, especially Miletus. This caused a new way of doing of being attuned to the luminosity of being. So if we think about light as kind of metaphor for its meaningfulness, its intelligibility, well, that already it's always there, emerging into human consciousness. And so myth is always going to be a response. You tell stories in relation to what you feel the story is being told to you by things. But then that luminosity gets pursued in this different way. Revelation we saw with the book of Genesis, where that luminosity of being is being heard from on high. That a voice is communicating something very, very precisely about the nature of reality. And then with philosophy, we have another divergence from myth. Again, not a break from myth, but a divergence. That is the search for that luminosity of being, the pursuit of it to kind of to get inside it through logos, through nous, which is intelligence, through psyche, the soul, that is the soul with its mind, psyche, nous, and with that logos, that ability to think through and reason through causality, the nature of reality. that's coordinate with a cosmos, that is that same root we get in cosmetic, that is this ordered whole. With political mythology, you have to deal with the disasters in Mesopotamia, for instance, the flash floods and so on, and have to account for one empire or one city taking over another city, or one empire taking over another empire. The philosophers are paring back techne, which is the artificial world that we create technologically, nomos, which is cultural, the social substance, the regime, trying to get back down to physis, nature. And that's so trying to get to the nature of things is what the philosopher wants to do. And so Aristotle called these first philosophers natural philosophers. And in fact, that is the beginning of both Western science and Western philosophy, depending on how the accent falls. Just as far as this typology that I kind of trace out here, reason and revelation share over against myth a kind of, well, first, they're outside of the imperial context. That is, they're not in the first place, like myth is often, political mythology. Philosophy and prophecy, let's say, they don't sit too easily with the regime. So there's something that's breaking from the kind of compact social substance with reason and revelation. But reason and myth share a kind of ascending desire to that quest to reach up to the heights of reality. But the difference between myth and reason is the logos, the logical and noetic control that philosophy would like to exercise in that pursuit. Whereas revelation and myth are both religious, right? And philosophy sits uneasily to that, but is not necessarily anti-religious. But myth and revelation are clearly, in some obvious way, religious. So this complex, they're overlapping, and seeing the similarities and differences, I think, is very useful. Two other terms I've got on the board here: aletheia, which is truth in Greek, and doxa, which is seeming, opinion, appearance. That's the two big sections of Parmenides' poem are the way of truth and the way of seeming. So that's to help orient one. And one last thought: when the philosopher tries to pare back reality, take away the conventional and the legal, the social, cultural substance, and the technological accretions, and get back to nature, that thing that the philosopher really wants to aim at, the nature of things, there's a new level of intelligibility that goes along with it, the logical, noetic. Since many of these philosophers are still religious, they are religious, though in a different way. The gods that Thales or Heraclitus or Parmenides are referring to, they have to be, because the reality that is being reached at by the philosophers is at a more basic level, physis, nature. The divinity that they're dealing with, which is coordinate to that nature, must be different from the melodramatic gods of myth, at least distinct in some way. That's a proposal. And I would say, insofar as, so Thales, of course, is known for predicting an eclipse in 585. That's why we get his flourishing year in that time. That's revolutionary, because these heavenly signs would be the mythological vision would say, well, that's what the gods are trying to tell us something. And for the natural philosopher, the proto-scientist, and the philosopher, no, nature has its causality. We just need to track it out. We need to do this logical inquiry. All right. So the question for us is, especially for religious people now, how much does a belief in miracle, insofar as that traduces, right, natural regularities, how much does that put us into the mythological camp? Is that a good or bad thing? And so on. So that's just a thing to get questions going. We see in both Heraclitus and Parmenides a contempt for the masses. And I think it might be worth thinking, is there something about philosophy, the philosophical enterprise? We know it wants to distance itself from the political mythology, but is there something inherently anti-democratic or elitist about the enterprise? I'm being provocative because I love philosophy, but it's a pattern there to deal with.
So question 1, compared to myth and revelation, what is different about the philosopher's relation to experience? How are Heraclitus and Parmenides both religious and yet not typically religious? Question 2, why do Heraclitus's aphorisms compel attention and excite thinking? Which ones do you find most captivating? Question number 3, what are the important themes and key images in Heraclitus? How might there be an intelligible logos or measure behind or within the relentless flux of becoming? Question number 4, what are the important themes and key images in Parmenides? How can there be both a way of truth, in which what is all there is, and there is no becoming, and a way of everyday opinion, whose subject is things that come to be and pass away?